Welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast. My name is Anthony Oliver, and today we take a look at the recently completed Tideway Tunnel project now operating beneath London's River Thames. Joining me today are two of the minds behind the delivery of this groundbreaking project. Roger Bailey, Chief Technical Officer at Tideway and Amey Director Tom Kinnear, who has been leading the Systems Integrator role on the project for the last few years. Lots to talk about because the £4.5 billion tunnel has certainly been turning programme delivery heads as a rare project that has been delivered pretty much on time, to budget, and is now operating to expectation. And it's a project that's not before its time, because for over 150 years, London's subterranean drainage and flood management pulse was maintained by the Victorian genius of Sir Joseph Bazalgette. His sprawling underground brickwork was a masterpiece of public health, keeping sewage off the streets and out of the Thames. Yet, as the city's population has swelled and rain intensity increased, his system has reached its limit, leaving the River Thames to bear the brunt as the combined sewage and rainwater system regularly overflowed into the river. The Tideway Tunnel, aka London's super sewer, has changed all that and is now fully operational, stretching 25 kilometres west to east, and since it was activated has prevented 19.7 million tonnes of sewage from entering the River Thames, which makes it more than just a tunnel. As former Chief Executive and project guiding mind Andy Mitchell put it, the project rekindles Londoners' love affair with the River Thames. Cleaner water plus new areas of quality riverside public space mean the public can now embrace the Thames as a positive part of city life. But beyond that, the project's success perhaps represents a revolution in how we deliver national infrastructure, with the Tideway company recently recognised by Time magazine as one of the world's most influential businesses. So let's hear more. Roger and Tom, welcome to the Infrastructure Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it's great to see you guys. And Roger, let's start with you and examine the grand vision for and delivery of the tunnel. As Chief Engineer, you've been masterminding the design and delivery of the project for nearly 11 years. I used a certain amount of hyperbole in my introduction. I mean, Roger, did I overdo it? Is this really a special project?
Yeah, I think it has been, as you say, it has been transformational in many ways. It's successfully completed with a number of major successes, I think, and ongoing successes to us. So, yes, I think it is a special project. And I think we can obviously delve in today to some of the reasons why that's the case. Yeah,
well, it's now a year into operation. I mean, after all that time planning and constructing, and I've chatted to you along the way at several key moments, what for you has been most surprising in terms of real world outcomes of the tunnel that perhaps wasn't originally visible in the design?
So I think we are, as you say, cleaning up the river now, and the since February of 25, all our sites were activated, and from the summer of 25, so pretty much a year, all the sites have been operating at full capacity. And what's great is that already anecdotally and unsolicited, many people who use the river, whether they're kayakers or whether they're people wandering along the foreshore or whatever, are saying, I mean, and this is quoting people, it doesn't smell like a sewer anymore. It smells like the sea.
Yeah.
So, and I myself going down onto the foreshore in Putney relatively recently, I used to live in Putney, much less plastic, sewage derived litter. That is great news for London, for the river, for people using the river. And it's our biggest green sort of space in London, blue-green space in London. And I remember back in the early days of the project, actually it's 14 years, Anthony, that I've been involved.
My apologies.
But a little bit earlier with before Tideway was formed, but it's been a long time. And in those days, some schools which you'd expect to engage with some citizen science on the foreshore just didn't do it. Why? Yeah. Because it's a horrible, smelly, dirty place, and you'll come across all sorts of unpleasantries. Now, it's still a dirty old river, and it will stay a dirty old river because of the silt, and it's got the tidal flow in it. So we're not going to get to a sort of the case of say the Seine, which has only got in Paris a very small tidal range, or very little indeed. In fact, probably nothing actually. It's very static up that far into France.
Yeah. But I last met you at the new Blackfriars public space area, and of course that's one of many public spaces that you've created around there. So aside from the river, it's actually added to the public realm in the capital. I mean, has the reception of those new public spaces surprised you?
I don't think it surprised us at all. When we set out at the beginning, we obviously realised that to build the scheme, we had to use sites into the river and, taking up valuable sort of environmental sites on the foreshore, reducing the navigational width of the river, particularly at Blackfriars. These are big deal things, and people just weren't allowed to build out into the river. But it was the only option for delivering the Tideway project. We did a lot of work to reduce the amount of sites where we did it. Some clever sort of replumbing of some of the systems in the old classic system. So instead of having 2 or 3 interconnection sites in the centre of London in a particular area, we managed to get it down to 1 in that. So overall, we reduced the number of sites. And those sites we decided right at the very beginning would be world-class public realm. And those are the words that went into our DCO, Development Consent Order application, and into the construction contracts. And then we basically held our team and our contractors to that with an exceptionally good architectural team in Tideway. But we also fired up the contractors to really deliver something that was, going to be fantastic to be in, because we were taking up big chunks of the river.
But I suppose at least there's an element of the project, Roger, that you can see, because you've had a 40-year career in civil engineering, design and construction with contractors and consultants working on highways, rail, aviation projects. But you started as a geotechnical engineer. And so you're used to, I suppose, much of the stuff you design and deliver being underground and never seen. Tideway, therefore, is more than just a tunnel because it has this such huge visible social impact.
Yeah, it always was. I mean, we always wanted to focus on the outcome. And one of the benefits of Tideway, I think, and one of the key critical success factors, I think, about it was that we could have a fresh start when Tideway came into being, because, a lot of projects are part of bigger organisations. And if you've got an operational railway or a road network or whatever, you've got to fit your major projects within those frameworks. Well, because the project was set up to be outside Thames water, that enabled Tideway to come along and then design ourselves and our approach to absolutely hit the bullseye in terms of this is the right thing and the right way to do it for the project itself. So, Thames Water, when they promoted the project, they created an investable box that Tideway sort of came out of, so to speak. And that investable box, basically Thames created, tied up all the loose ends that perhaps in a in-house project you might leave to later on in the project. And the other key factor is Thames are the operator. We're about to hand over to Thames as formally in that guise as the operator. They were there. They actually created the project and they promoted it, and then they handed it to Tideway to deliver. And now 10 years later, 11 years later, Tideway are handing it back to them. So one of the key things you see, I think, is important is that the operators involved all the way through the project. And that's been achieved sort of here because Thames is the operator. They sort of, handed delivery responsibility to Tideway. They didn't go away. They're always there. We're always interacting with them. But now they're back as the operator. So that's, I think, a key aspect. And so if you don't have the operator at the start of a project, I think that is a key sort of flashpoint of risk going forward. Because
it means that they, when they actually take over the project, they are embedded in it, they understand it, and they know what they're going to get. I'm going to turn to you, Tom, because Amey's been the system integrator on the project since 2015. And just to set the scene, I think it builds probably on what Roger was saying about making sure that the ultimate operator understands what the system is all about. But just explain what the role of system integrator is and why has it been so important?
Yeah, so with systems integration, it means a lot of things to different people, right? But in this context of a capital delivery program like Tideway, systems integration is about bringing all together all the various aspects of the program and integrating them so it works as a system. And that's creating that link between construction into operations. And as Roger alluded to, it puts Thames at the heart of how it was designed, built, implemented as part of that. I guess the reason why systems integration is worthy of a conversation in a podcast like this is that if you look at all aspects of a capital delivery program like this, in terms of a cost point of view, systems integration is fairly small. But actually, if you're planning this, 20 years in advance, we came on board 11 years ago, the level of uncertainty that systems integration can derive actually creates quite a significant level of risk throughout the whole program. So it's really important to get systems integration right at the beginning. And the other aspect to say to that is that systems integration is actually becoming more and more important now as a connected world that we live in, where there are higher demands in terms of level of access to data, real-time information, enhanced connectivity to drive improvement, whether it's improvement in safety or through the efficiency in the operation. So that's why the systems integration is so important.
Well, we hear so often about projects failing at the system integration point, and you say it's an issue to talk about on a podcast. I recommend episodes 82 and 127 with Paul Turner, Chief Executive of the Institute of Commissioning and Assurance, to hear why. He puts it incredibly clearly about the fact that he comes from a petrochemical background, about the fact that in the petrochemical industry it's absolutely nailed on that you have to get that systems integration, that systems approach. What have you done right then? And what have you done to get this right on this project?
So I actually think it's both from a Tideway point of view. I think that there are some aspects that I think Roger is better placed to talk about getting the environment right for us as Amey to go and deliver that. And I'll let. Roger, do you want to go first, and then I can follow up on it?
Yeah. So I think Amey is our system integrator contractor. What does that mean in very practical terms? It means that we've got 4 contractors on our project, 3 big main works civils contractors and Amey. And in the reality of it, the main works civils go to do all the tunnelling, all the civil engineering, all the architectural landscape, and all of the mechanical and electrical equipment, pen stocks, monitoring that's there, the ventilation system, but all of their kit goes to a PLC on each site, and that's the end of their job. Sorry,
PLC is
for program logic controller, so a box. And they tested all of their equipment going down from that box to make sure it all worked. And then we've got the control system, the control room or rooms for the project, because there's a few of them. Now, all of those are connected through servers and through various systems, communication systems that come back to another PLC next to the contractor's one. And there's a wire between the two. That's the system. So what effectively Tom's team, they designed the control system, right, yeah. They installed the control system, they tested the control system, and in that process they integrated all of that mechanical and electrical equipment that the main works contractors had put in.
Yeah. So Tom, it's presuming more than just a wiring job though. There's a strategy and a concept behind it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, look, there's a mixture of hardware, software, which these are particularly in the software space, third parties, which they are constantly iterating. So, cybersecurity is a very good example of that. They need to constantly update and enhance that solution, and sometimes they go out of date. So it's like a moving feast in terms of what's been built as part of it. On top of that, it's then also integrating it into the existing Thames Water systems as well.
Well, your background is firmly in data management in your career with Deloitte, and you're working in the highway sector at Amey now with National Highways. But I mean, I suppose the question is, you've embedded the technology into the heart of the project. Is it a technology issue that you're struggling with, or is it a cultural issue that you're struggling to get people to think about these things differently?
So I think any organisation that says they're a systems integrator, I think the one thing all of them will have is highly technical individuals. So to be able to do that, but that's just the fundamentals in systems integration. The elements that need to be brought into this is collaboration. It's influence, and it's in the ability to be resilient and agile at the same time, because you need that balance.
Which are all cultural things. They're all cultural issues.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes the challenge is that we go straight down the route of we need systems integration. It's technology. We go technical. Actually, it's about building a team with all those cultural aspects that allows you the agility to be able to respond very quickly to changes because of the high uncertainty. At the same time, being resilient so that you are not delaying the program. And that I think is the success of what Amey's done to achieve what we've achieved.
Okay. Well, I'm going to drill in a bit more about the data side of things and what you're actually measuring and how you're dealing with that. But just a bit more on the culture side. I mean, Roger, Tideway, I mentioned, was named as one of the most influential companies. I mean, beyond the engineering, what specific element of the project's culture do you think has earned that global recognition?
I think there's a few things really, and it's not necessarily rocket science, but it is setting the bar high and trying to do the right thing across a number of different areas, and then sticking to that when the going gets tough. So I think we had an open book. So when our license was formed in 2015 and our new team fully took over and our new shareholders came in, we were able to design how we operated, our culture, our ways of operating, the culture that we'd have, the values that we'd have, and we could set that out to be hopefully the best in class at that point. We were lucky. I think the project had been, we were lucky, but I think Thames did it, and Ofwat and other stakeholders did a great job of allowing the project to be front loaded by Thames. So a lot of design issues and things like that, a lot of design stuff was put through a significant review, so that the design was really, in terms of the system design, was pretty much 100% done at that point early in the project, with maybe 30% of the detailed civil engineering design and detailed mechanical, electrical remaining to be done. And we've had very few changes to the system design, 5 changes, and they're pretty minor in the scheme of things. So we've frozen design for the system at the beginning, and we've been very, very strong in preventing changes to it because it was a very robust design. We've also, I think, made sure that we created a great place to work. So Tideway's really positive thing was, I think it was fun under the leadership of Andy Mitchell and with the support of our board of directors and our first chairman, Sir Neville Sims. You created a really great place to work, where the key thing was, I think, to be trying to operate at an exemplary level, and each different challenge that we were faced with or milestone that we faced, not just to sort of limp over it, but to fly over it in a great way, and also to reward people for that by attracting a great team. So, Jacobs is our program manager and project manager under the NEC contracts. They've been a great partner in that with us. And one of the key things is that as Tideway's senior team has been relatively stable throughout the sort of 10, 12 years of delivery, but the Jacobs team has evolved, and they've had, project directors and other members of their senior team have evolved in a very positive succession plan. So you've had a nice balance between stability of client, which is really key, I think, and then the right strengths in the delivery support to enable that to happen. And that doesn't happen by accident. We knew that was going to happen, and we were planning for that. Gear changes through the life of the project.
Tom, you're nodding your head that you agree there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of the results of that, of what Roger just talked about. So I'd look at the Amey team. All the years of my experience, this has had the least amount of attrition in terms of from an Amey team in there. I am out of the leadership team where there's 6 of us. I think I've been on the program the shortest, which is 5 years, right? And it's that culture. Yes, we're making a difference, but it's the culture that's been built as a program, not just as what's been built within Amey, that's enabled that. And just another snippet about the culture that had been created. It's about the resilience when things go wrong. There are examples of, at the beginning of the commissioning, we had some challenges with our connectivity across the sites, which meant that the overall availability of the network, of the system, dropped way below the SLAs. What we didn't have at that very point, we did not have the answer. We didn't have the answer to what the problem was. But actually, Roger, Tideway, Thames Water came around that, and instead of adding pressure on us to go and find what that solution is, it was we were to take a methodical approach to understanding what those issues are and address it, and as a consequence of that, we got to the root cause and we fixed it. And that is just, I think, is an example of the culture that has been built a part of this program.
Sounds like collaboration, Tom.
I mean, I would add a couple of things: client ownership and agility. So we, as a client, there was key ownership of a few key things. So health, safety and well-being was an absolute partnership approach between us and our contractors, with us setting a very high standard to do things the right way, and to also deal with health and safety in a way that whenever a problem happened, and you know, I think we got a good safety record, but we still had incidents of people have been hurt, which is obviously regrettable, but I think a lot less than other projects of our size. Yeah. And I think one of the key things is, and members of our contracting team have told me this, is that, you know, whenever anything happened, the key thing from us is to find out what happened, why did it happen, how do we stop it happening again? We want to put our arms around everybody involved, the people, the individuals and the organisations. And I think that was a big change from say, past health and safety initiatives. It's very much more understanding, taking ownership of it with the contractors.
Taking the fear away.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the same with risk, the same with quality, and the same with our commissioning approach. It's to work together. And I think us as a client team really understood what our contractors, our designers, our supply chain were doing. And we were very interested in it. And we didn't want to get the long screwdriver out. It's their job to do it. But it's our job to understand what they're doing, because this is a project with 120-year design life, and with proper maintenance and care, it should last for hundreds of years. And as Joseph Bazalgette said when he did his bit back in 1870 or whatever, he said, we're only going to do this once, you need to do it properly. Well, that's what we're doing. And so quality is really important. And you know, I think, you know, passing risk over to contractors and just expecting them to deal with that in the right way, you know, that's not going to work. You've got to work with them. Ultimately, you're the one who wants this project, and the risk will ultimately come back to you. So you need to understand it. You need to help to drive it to the right solution. And that's what we've done by being very agile as a management team. And when the heads of steam built up with our contractors and whatever it was, we dealt with that and moved forward and kept the project moving.
Great. Well, just for clarity, we weren't there when Bazalgette said that, just for clarity, Roger. Let's go back to the top, because you mentioned it at the start, Roger. Setting this project up, the model. It was the Specified Infrastructure Project Regulation (SIPA) model. It was the first, and that effectively allows UK government and Ofwat to designate large, complex water projects for competitive tender rather than allowing incumbent water companies, Thames in this case, to build them directly. I mean, looking back, could this project have been delivered under a traditional water company debt model, or was this innovative structure the only way to do it?
Well, for this project, yes, because it's such a huge project, the biggest project ever done in the water industry, and Thames Water were not willing or certainly did not want to deliver it on their balance sheet within their company without a government support package for that. And I think that's been one of the major successes of it. It's because that government support package took some high impact risks, low probability risks away from our shareholders and enabled our shareholders to make a more competitive sort of weighted average annual cost of capital assessment, which then brought down the bill impact for bill payers in the Thames Water region.
Yeah, you kept them down at £25, £26, despite early fears of 80, 90, maybe even over £100.
Well, it was 70 to 80 in 2011, and by the time we got to licence award, it was £20 to £25 a year. One of our successes is that we have kept that within that £20 to £25 a year in, I think, 2014 money. We've kept within that despite all the things that have hit us over the last 10 years.
Yeah. Well, Tom, complexity is very often the enemy of budget and funding models. I mean, how did your digital systems help reduce that complexity and de-risk the commissioning phase across those 21 Tideway sites?
So I think with data, there's so much out there that you can possibly create, develop, and use to make effective decision making. In this instance, we want to put the operator at the heart of the system and of the operation, and therefore, actually, what you do want to generate insight, but actually, you don't want to cause too much information out there. So actually, it's just about understanding what it is that they need to operate a tunnel. This tunnel, from a systems point of view, in terms of how it flows, is gravity driven. So it is fairly simple in nature. Dare I say simple in this, but you get the idea. So it's actually more the main focus around this is actually the resilience in the system, rather than giving lots and lots of data insights as part of that. A good example of this is that the system is based on, it has a telecoms line, so a fibre line. In most instances, what if that fails? Then the system switches straight over to a mobile signal as part of that, and it's those elements in the design that needs to be built to be able to create resilience in the overall design, because that is the key thing for an operator in this instance. It's not about whizzy, wonderful data insights. It's actually about having confidence on the reliability of the system so that you can operate it.
And that's key, I imagine, for the investor as well, because there's a lot of private money riding on this project. Is it over £2 billion in green bonds, I think it was. Which leads me, I suppose, to drilling in a bit more about the system integrator role and the use of data. Because, you've been at Amey Advisory for 6 years, and you've worked in the past at Network Rail and Deloitte and data management, as I said before, and analytical roles for clients. I mean, as a director for the Highways and Utilities team at Amey, you look after data science strategic partnership with National Highways, and an organisation that has really placed true value now on its data. It's actually assessed how much it's all worth. Are we therefore turning the corner in infrastructure when it comes to investing in data management and using it to manage the sort of risks that Roger was talking about there?
I would definitely say we're moving in the right direction, but it comes back down to the operator. Everything that we do needs to be for the user, and where we're at in the world of infrastructure is I still feel we are working with silos. I see examples of this across all of infrastructure operators, where it's not just the data, it's the systems. And the investment in siloed systems and not being able to integrate that is actually hindering the ability to better manage assets, to drive efficiencies in operations. So you need to look at, we as an industry need to look at, it's not just data, it's the technology, it's the people that are going to use it, it's the processes in place, it's the whole operating model. And that's the element that you've always got to look at. It's not just data.
Yeah. But of course, Roger, you've got the operational control centre, the brain of the Thames now. How does that system decide in real time when to open a valve during a storm? Is it without human intervention, or is it all based upon Tom's data, or is there a series of folks who actually make those decisions human-wise?
Okay, so it is relatively straightforward. I'm not going to say simple. I'll say straightforward. So the system is open in default mode. There are penstocks, which are valves, as you say, like a portcullis. They're all open. They're all open now. They're all waiting. So basically, the tunnel is default mode is open. So it's as it fills up with a storm. So at various set levels, automatically, as it raises up, the different penstocks shut. And there's a priority. So the last penstock to shut is the Abbey Mills penstock over in the Lee Tunnel, at the end of the Lee Tunnel, which Thames built and opened in 2016. So we plumbed into the back of that, and that leads that overflow. Abbey Mills goes into the River Lee. That river has been dramatically improved since 2016, and it's because of its nature, it is very prone to the impact of sewage pollution. So there's the plan is that, on a normal sort of weather conditions, 1 in 10 years there would be a spill at Abbey Mills. So the tunnel is always maintained with enough capacity that Abbey Mills can always flow into the river unless in exceptional circumstances. Then you've got the western end of the river, where there's a lot of sort of leisure activity, rowing, sailing, that sort of thing, up in Putney, Hammersmith, Chiswick, that sort of area. So the western penstocks shut just before the Abbey Mills penstock would shut, and then the central part is the penstocks that shut first. And then the main decision then is when you start pumping into the sewage treatment works at Beckton. So that is based on what's happening in Beckton, any issues there. If there was a problem at Beckton and you couldn't do that, then there is a bypass tunnel which would then pump the tunnel out into the river at Beckton. So that's not great news. That'll hopefully be used very, very infrequently, if at all. But it is better to have that being pumped out at the very eastern end rather than going all the way through London. That's there as a sort of absolute fail-safe. But you can only store sewage in there for a relatively short period of time before it goes septic, and then that's more of a problem for both the river and the sewage treatment works if you were to pump it into the river.
Well, I mean, so many projects, Tom, struggle with data, too much, too little, wrong sort, wrong form. What is the hardest lesson regarding matching the needs of the operator, or the data that's available and the needs of the operator?
From my experience, actually, the biggest challenges that I see is actually the quality of the data, and the process of undertaken of capturing that data, whether it's manually through human intervention or by machine. It is that factor that causes the issues where it just completely eradicates confidence in the operation. And so, if there was, from my point of view, if there was one thing to focus in on, and it is probably the simplest, is to hone in on when you're capturing that data and how that data gets managed, and where are the points of failure within that. Because if you don't get that right, you're not able to make effective decisions as an infrastructure operator.
Yeah, interesting. Well, look, just bring us to a close. We could talk about this for a long while, but we haven't completely got endless time. But Roger, you have set new standards of delivery, cost control, health, safety, well-being. You've moved millions of tons of material by river rather than road, which is another interesting and important first. You're now aiming for acceptance in 2027 with, as you say, the handover to Thames Water. What are the key performance indicators for you that will tell you, yes, we have truly succeeded as a project then?
Well, I think we've already got them, actually. They're in, I had the privilege of activating the first site in August of 2024 at Barn Elms, and then we finished the last activation in February 25, and then we were operating the tunnel in a sort of slightly restricted mode until the middle of July last year. So from July last year, the River Thames has been completely protected to the maximum level of our project. So if you're the River Thames, you've been protected, and that is now there forever. It's going to be there. So for me personally, that is as somebody who was, brought up and lived by the River Thames and paddled in Putney when I was 3 years old and all the rest of it, that's our job done. What we're doing now really is just going through the administrative part of it, making sure everybody's comfortable and satisfied to help, because Thames have to take it on as the operator, and that obviously is a key milestone to go through. But practically, the job's done.
Yeah. And Tom, your job is by no means finished, because you're going to continue to operate this thing. So, what will success look like for you?
So, we are still going through just the final parts of fixing certain faults for handover. So at the moment that's a key focus for us. So I think the next major milestone on that is handover of the system. We then move into the maintenance phase for maintenance on there. I do feel we are well placed with the relationship that we've got with Tideway, the work that we've done, that we can provide a maintenance that is as high quality as the construction of it and the build of it itself, and to continue on that legacy really. I think that for me is really important.
Well, interesting you used the word legacy. I was going to finish on discussion about legacy, Tom. I mean, do you think there's a digital legacy for this project?
Yes. I think if you take technology and data, a key component of that is systems integration. If you get your systems integration right, the chances are you will be successful in what you're trying to achieve. I think for us, the digital legacy in this is that the system is still operating in the design that it was in 2016, in 2116. And I think that comes down to building resilience in the design and what was built and commissioned. That's for me is the success. And I very much doubt I'll be there in 2116, but who knows? Who knows?
Roger probably will be, with his picture in the attic. I mean, Roger, if you could go back to 2014, or was it 2012 when you started on the project, and give yourself one piece of advice about delivering this project better, more effectively, with a greater legacy, and what might that be?
Oh, that's a good one, really. I'm not sure that there is anything significant, because I think we did set out to do a really, really good job. And I think there are small things, relatively speaking. We could have done more site investigation and more investigation at certain sites where we decided not to before Tideway was in existence, because we didn't want to upset local residents and the users of the London road network. At Blackfriars, we could have looked at some of the infrastructure, the sort of old infrastructure in the gas mains, which caused a big problem on that site. But if we'd have had to have shut the Blackfriars underpass for weeks, if not, and we didn't want to do that when we were still in planning. And then in King Edward Memorial Park in the east of London, we have some serious changed ground conditions which affected quite a lot of our sort of civil engineering at the surface, and also we changed by a small amount the alignment of the tunnel and turned an online shaft into an offline shaft with a connection tunnel. Those two things were very expensive and very difficult things to work through, which we could have possibly if we'd done more at the beginning in terms of investigation. But we made the decisions at the time, and they were the right decisions at the time. And so I think it's very easy to go back with hindsight. But I would just say to people generally, I believe that the more work you do at the front end of a project to understand what you're doing, the more site investigation you do, the more design you do, the more you get yourself so that you're absolutely raring to go. That is the way forward. And I think that's what we did on the project generally. One or two places we had a hiccup, but we've got over those because I think we work very closely with our contractors in a very collaborative way. We as a client felt ourselves to be part of the construction industry, and we wanted to give a legacy back to the construction industry in lots of different ways, in the way we managed quality, in the way we managed risk, in the way we managed logistics, that we weren't sort of sitting up here sort of lording it over the contractors. We were all in it together. You can't just, do this without relationships. And you have to have them all the way through your chairman, your chief executive, your directors, your managers, all the way down to the individuals working on the site. And if you don't get it right at any one of those points, it's not going to work. So you have to work on that.
Good. No, look, Roger, Tom, thanks so much. It's great to hear you both talking so passionately and so aligned about the success and the huge impact that this piece of infrastructure has, which is largely unseen by most, but genuinely changing lives in the capital. So, actually, one last thing though, Roger. I mean, Bazalgette's work lasted 150 years. Are you going to outlast Bazalgette's record there of 150 years? Do you think? Will he be talked about in the same aura as Bazalgette?
Well, I mean, it's 120-year design life, and as you know, design life means that's when you start to deteriorate, not when you've crumbled to dust. So if the tunnel is properly maintained, properly monitored for things like hydrogen sulfide attack, that sort of thing. I mean, not everything has got 120 years. The mechanical electrical is less. Some of Tom's software is even, just a few years when it has. So there's different, but the basic civil engineering is 120 years. But if it's properly maintained, it should last for hundreds of years. And if you look at what Bazalgette did, and you go down into his chambers and things, and you got out a jet wash, it looked like it was built yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. No.
It's quite incredible. And I think if you do things right, to the right level of quality, and then look after them properly, then that asset will continue for hundreds of years, I'm sure. I mean, we have a license, Tideway has a license of 999 years. Okay.
Well, I do remember you taking me down in one of the tunnels below the French embassy, I think it was, and it is quite awe-inspiring when you see what was achieved back in 1851. So, phenomenal record to follow there. But thanks so much for sharing what you've been up to on the Tideway Tunnel.
Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Well, look, sadly, that's all we've got time for on the podcast now, but there is more in the pipeline as we continue to probe the big issues facing the sector. If you haven't done so already, do check out the Infrastructure Podcast website, www.infrastructure-podcast.com, where you'll find background information and all the latest podcasts to listen to and to share. So, thanks for joining us. Thanks again to Roger and to Tom. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.